Do you think there may be an opportunity of bringing in people who've kind of stepped out? I mean, people like kind of Paul Polman at Unilever, but he's now stepped down and he's making all the right noises. Are there potentially ways of harnessing some of those people?
We believe there are, and I mean, we believe that this is one of the reasons why this approach of making an amendment which then requires ratification over time is actually a good way to go, because as far as the sort of economic world is concerned, the important thing is they need to see this coming. Because actually, I mean, in reality, if we were able to put ecocide law in place tomorrow, it would be absolute chaos, as you can imagine. I mean, the ICC would never be able to deal with it. Yeah. You'd have the entire corporate world raged against you. But realistically, this law has to happen at some point. In a sense, I mean, we believe we're simply trying to accelerate a process that at some point the world is going to reach anyway, because it will have to. Yeah. So what we're trying to bring forward is this, so that, those in the positions of power, sort of in a corporate sense, but also politically, are able to say, well, actually, we need to make ourselves compliant with this. And we may have a transition period to do this. And this has been done before. I mean, if you go back to the abolition of slavery, I mean, there were hundreds of companies back in the 19th century who said, we absolutely cannot ban slavery. If we're not allowed to trade in people, my God, the economy is going to collapse. It's the end of the British Empire. It's going to be a complete disaster. Now, actually, slavery was ultimately banned on a moral basis, which is what we're talking about here. We're talking about really basic kind of moral level. And what happened is there was a period of transition. And during that period of transition, those businesses were able to change their practices. And actually, not one of them went under. They all started trading in different things or in different ways. And we can do that. And we also know from the Second World War, from how fast our economy was refocused to deal with that threat. We know that we're capable of doing this. We know business is capable of doing this. And we know people are capable of doing this.
And shareholders as well.
Absolutely.
They have to start asking all the right questions.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we have also encountered is that actually a large number of people in those corporations would love to be able to start making the changes that a law like this would require. Yeah. They would love to do that, but they're constrained not to by the status quo. Yeah. And so it was interesting. I mean, Polly had a conversation with the head of a bank back in 2011, I think, and said, why is it that you continue to fund this dangerous industrial activity? And the guy's response was ever so simple. He just said, it's not a crime. Yeah. And that just kind of says it in a nutshell. Yeah. Is that actually if you and there's been in fact they did a study, I think it was University of Colorado that did a study on how business attitudes and practices change with changes in the law. And what they found was that when you change environmental regulation, you don't see a change in activity, you see a change in budgeting.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. So you see them, you see companies budgeting for what might have to be more compensation further down the line, for example. Yeah. When you change criminal law, then you see a change in actual practices. And so, I think this is the secret. I think this is really what we're looking for. And I think it's also important to see how complementary this is to the kind of uprising of everyday people realising that something needs to be done. So, whether it's Extinction Rebellion, not everyone's prepared to get out and block out a street, but a lot of people have sympathy for it because what it's waking up is this sense that there's really something profoundly wrong that needs dealing with. Yeah. And yet what's also happening a lot is people are saying, well, we know what you're against, what are you for? We feel that ecocide law is the thing that we can be for. Right. Because it actually has that potential
to unlock everything.
Exactly. It's like it's an unlocker, almost a passcode. Or Polly used to describe it as a trim tab, which is an expression that Buckminster Fuller used. And he actually said, call me the trim tab. A trim tab is apparently this mechanism on a big ship that you move, which then turns the rudder, which then turns the ship. Right. And, from our perspective, that's what ecocide law is capable of doing.
Yeah, wonderful. What's happened recently in Holland? There was a bit of, there was a little kind of victory there, wasn't there? I mean, do you get encouragement from those?
We do. I mean, the Okenda case, which I believe is the one you're talking about. Yes. The initial victory was in 2015, but then it was under appeal a couple of times. It's been appealed twice by the government. What happened was it was a sort of class action, if you like. It was a civil action that was taken claiming that the Dutch government was not doing enough to protect its citizens against climate emergency. And they won the case. It's now been appealed twice by the Dutch government. As far as I understand it, that the final judgment from the second appeal actually hasn't emerged yet. But the fact that it's got this far, that it's survived, the first case, the first appeal, and it's now moving to the second appeal, this is very powerful stuff. And the fact that these litigation cases are happening across the world with people taking governments and trying to hold them to account is a very important step. I mean, we feel it is a step, that actually the real key that will make the difference is actually bringing in a criminal law into effect.
So the three countries that really stopped ecocide becoming a law within the sort of Treaty of Rome were the UK, Holland, and Germany. They're the main.
France.
France. So if the Dutch government now says, concedes to this ruling, this case. Does it then follow that they would have no objection to ecocide being introduced back into
that's a little bit where the proof of the pudding is going to be in the eating,
right?
In the sense that we don't expect. I mean, don't get me wrong. Expectations have been thwarted in good ways recently. I mean, in the sense that I certainly personally never expected the UK government to actually declare a climate emergency in response to what happened with the rebellion week, and they did, which was quite extraordinary. And I think that the XR have done an enormous, an incredible job of raising awareness and evoking a response in that way. So I don't want to rule anything out. That said. We wouldn't necessarily expect these first world countries, especially the oil states like ourselves, like the Netherlands, to be first movers on this. However, we do, as we know, there's huge civil support for the direction that we're moving in. And so what we do potentially anticipate is that once an amendment is tabled at an international level, that gives civil society a huge lever. And these civil cases, of course, simply add weight to that. So it then becomes all the more powerful.
What are you looking forward to? How do you see the campaign evolving over the next few months, years, and so on?
Well, we are, as I said, we're working with Vanuatu and a number of other small island states, and we expect to be taking at least 2, possibly more islands with us to the International Criminal Court Conference this December. That conference happens every December, and that's the key forum for advancing this mission, if you like. And so that's very encouraging. We already have side events planned. We know that the profile will be raised of what's happening with the Pacific and the potential for new legal ways of dealing with it. The earliest we would imagine even the possibility of actually tabling an amendment is next year, and that would still be very fast, because with diplomatic work these things are never completely predictable. However, we can certainly say that the ball is rolling, and that this is way beyond the idea of a wonderful wheeze that somebody's had. This is actually something that's already in motion. So that's very exciting. On the campaign side, we've seen a big growth in support for what we're doing. We've seen a lot of complementarity with the rising climate movements. And we're also seeing, for example, we're seeing a few towns wanting to engage in a sort of pilot scheme whereby not only
transition towns.
A bit like Earth. They're actually it's going to be called Earth Protector towns. Okay. Because actually, this is something that's key to our to the campaign. Is it's based on a trust fund document, so it's not just a simple crowdfund. It's actually based on a legal document, and rather unusually, that document's actually been rubber stamped right across the world. Apostilled is the legal term. So in virtually every jurisdiction. So what that means is it has a certain weight and credibility that goes beyond just a normal crowdfunder or a petition. It means that when those islands want to say, well, we have this civil support across the globe, they're able to say, well, there's actually a trust fund that's actually specifically supporting this, and the people who sign up to it is called the Earth Protectors Trust Fund. So by donating to it, you are de facto you're an Earth Protector, which is a lovely concept, and people have really, really responded to that. And so we have as I say, we've already got over 10,000 Earth Protectors, and they've been, they're gifting between, €5 as a one-off to, 10, 20 euros a month to, in some cases of, high net worth individuals, as much as 100,000 euros on occasion. That's enabled us to get our team to that International Criminal Court conference for 3 years in a row, and that's quite something. Obviously, if there are any sponsors out there, one way of supporting this is actually, financially to support this and really help that to go ahead, because obviously it costs a certain amount to actually take delegates from a state, deal with their ICC fees and so on. So that's a direction that we're moving in. But this concept of an earth protected town is something that really seems to also be catching on in our hometown of Stroud, but there are also towns dotted around. There's one in Greece, there's one in Holland.
You're twinning.
Yeah,
really.
exactly. There's this kind of sense of, and the idea is that, your council, considers how you would approach things like, infrastructure, education, land management, all of these things, as if ecocide law were in place.
Yeah.
And conceiving of, criminal law as this protective law, how do we become an earth protector town? And kind of it's a kind of moving towards, which is a very concrete sort of thing that communities can potentially do. So we're working out a template for that at the moment.
Fabulous. And do you feel that you're sort of, becoming part of a kind of a pincer movement, with Extinction Rebellion, and people like, I don't know, Kate Raworth, with the Going Out Economy, with Rob Hoskins, the transition town,
all
that. Do you feel as if you are,
we definitely feel there's a coming together here. There's a complementarity between these different movements. And actually, in a sense, I suppose, we see, ecocide law as being almost a linchpin that can bring, all of these things into play together, because it's not, it's not like, it's not a sort of simple single environmental campaign. It actually supports, every environmental campaign out there will benefit from this law being in place. So it's, it's very all-encompassing in that way.
Well, I was going to say, Ian Redmond, we're very grateful for Ian giving away his home today so that we can host this interview, and Ian will be joining us in a second. But I was thinking, of course, Ian is chairman of the Ape Alliance, for instance, renowned field biologists and so on. So it's organisations, obviously, all of the environmental organisations, whether it's, Ian's or Born Free or Orangutan Foundation, all of these environmental foundations should all be coming together for this, for this shared vision, effectively.
Absolutely. We sort of feel that actually, any given environmental campaign could enthusiastically recommend its members to support what we're doing. 2 minutes and a fiver, and they're an earth protector, and they can carry on with their, focus on their particular arena. But also, it's with conservation projects, there's always potentially the threat of, legal but ecocidal activity that that has the potential of encroaching on, territories and arenas in which these organisations are working. And so we sort of feel like, moving towards a law of ecocide would absolutely be 100% supportive of all of those campaigns.
Right, so how do we become an earth protector?
Very simply by going to our website, which is the campaign site is at stopecocide.earth.
Right.
And signing up.
Fantastic. Could you make this kind of sign so that it'll be pointing down towards...
So go to stopecocide.earth. It'll take you 2 minutes and a fiver, and become officially an earth protector. That's the very obvious thing. And of course there are different levels of commitment. If you want to then take it out amongst your personal networks, spread the word, we've got in preparation a number of materials. We already have things like flyers, placards, things you can download from the website, to help to spread that word. And we're working on, talks that people can give as well and all of that. So, yeah.
Well, thank you, Jojo. It's been wonderful. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. That was great. Thanks. And wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
And would you be nice to maybe...
Yes, it'd be lovely.
Do you want to have a break for 5 minutes?
Yeah, well, that'd be great. Actually, I'll finish my tea.
Have a tea, and then I'll...
No, it's perfect actually. When it's freshly boiled, I can really drink it. So, spot on.